Okay, so the other, I alluded to it a second ago, the other interesting news, and I think certainly is telling or useful as an input as if you're a CIO, is where was this at? But the U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, was he talking at an event? Yes.
Speaking
Oh, he
to
was
the
testifying.
Senate Banking Committee, yes.
And he, as far as I know, I think this is the first time he's really in any substantive way weighed in on the impact of AI. I don't, is that a true statement?
Yeah, like the Jerome Powell, he's the chair of the Federal Reserve. He's been in Federal Reserve and Treasury jobs across administrations for quite a while now after being an investment banker. So he definitely understands how money flows. And normally his opinions are mostly around things like monetary policy, monetary flows, and understanding how that affects inflation and economic macroeconomic rates that affect the American economy. Frankly, pretty nonpartisan and non-political stuff.
But he hasn't really done a whole lot of weighing in on the impact of AI, right?
Not
Publicly.
really, and AI
Yeah.
has not been a big issue for him, frankly, because it's not his thing normally.
So to me, there's like three big bullet points in his statements, right? The first is he basically said the current impact of AI on the economy and the labor market is limited. And of course, if you are watching the show or reading the tech news, you're like, what? Are you kidding me? I mean, it's all everyone talks about, billions and billions. But, from his view at a macroeconomic level, looking at the markets, I think that's a really important and telling statement, a grounding for all of us to remember that right now, the actual impact of all of this on our economy is limited. But then the second thing he says, however, its capabilities are his, in quote, enormous. And that is not a word that he throws around often, and will eventually drive significant change. So he's saying right now, don't believe all the hype. It is nowhere near having all this impact. Part two, believe the hype. It's going to have a massive impact, right? It's going to have significant change. Part three, don't believe the hype because it's going to take a long time. This sort of widespread innovation and adoption often happens much more slowly than we expect. So to me, it was like, this is like a big truth telling machine. It's like, we have all this hype out there and he sort of like lays it out that, what to believe and what not to believe. And I think that's super useful. And I think it actually rings, from my perspective anyway, rings really true.
Yes. And I think this is also important because the federal chair probably has the most nuanced job in all of the government, frankly. And this started back in the Alan Greenspan days, kind of with the Clinton administration, where every single word that Greenspan would say would literally move markets. If he said there was a significant change versus a sufficient rate change, like that in and of itself would make the stock market go crazy. And that is this job that Powell has. So Jerome Powell picks his words pretty carefully when he's taking on any sort of topic, and he respects that position. And he is very careful with his words in response, has everybody in this position in my adult life, at least. They've been extremely careful about what they say from a media perspective. So the fact that he is pointing out that AI is not a significant driver for the economy yet, and that he warns about the challenges of using technology and in adopting technology going forward, I think is significant, showing where is AI really from a big picture perspective. When we in the tech world can get extremely caught up in talking about 20, 30, 50% of jobs just being wiped out willy-nilly, as Anthropic's CEO, Dario Modi, basically said just a little while ago, something like 50% of all entry-level jobs would be wiped out by AI. It's interesting to see Powell saying, no, that's not really happening yet. We don't really see any evidence that that is about to happen imminently.
Yeah, and he pointed out again very pointedly that the uncertainty around it, right? Because that's the other part. He didn't say, "Oh, this is going to happen," and not that anyone can really predict this, but that he explicitly called out the uncertainty of understanding exactly when we hit that tipping point, when it actually starts having that major impact. And I think it runs counter to some of the narratives we're getting in the press right now. Interestingly, the same article from the Register highlighted some of these notes that just this last week. So British Telecom announced that they are cutting 42% of their staff by 2030, claiming that it's all driven by AI ability to reduce headcount. Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, made all kinds of news last week because he was talking about how AI is presently today, right now in the present, handling 30 to 50% of the work in his company. Now, he walked that back a little bit later, and I think he carved out specifically in engineering and support and a few other places. But I will also point out that Salesforce has not been reducing their staff. I mean, and I don't know that they're even necessarily showing, growth outside of their employee capacity. So I don't know where that number is coming from. I really do question its efficacy and what it means. I mean, and look, I'm a believer. I'm a believer in the impact of all of this, but I'm super wary of the hype around it as well. And so that's why I really appreciated these sort of dissecting this into these three big points: where we're at today, what its potential is, and realistically how long it's going to take before we see that impact. And I guess the fourth piece is, and not really understanding what that is, right? It's probably gonna be slower than we expect, but we don't really know. And I think that's, it's a classic or a really beneficial view as if you're an enterprise IT leader to take and say, okay, this helps me frame where we're really at.
Yeah, I will say right now, I think that any company planning to cut 30% of the workforce is making a big mistake. I think they're going to quickly find out that they have continuity issues and governance issues that they were taking for granted, and that they haven't figured out a good long-term plan for having AI take over all of the, call it, commodity work that they think they're able to get done this quickly. I think that's overly aggressive, and we're going to see a couple of years from now the companies that made that dip having to either rehire or change their company in some way as a result. I think we're going to see some messy stories come out of this.
Well, I honestly think we're going to see a lot of non-stories. Like I would be willing to bet that if we were to follow BT on this, they don't follow through on it, because the practicalness of it is really challenging to manage. And I agree. I don't see it. I'm not saying, eventually, but they said 2030. So in fairness, that's 5 years from now, right? 5 years in this era. I mean, ChatGPT didn't exist 5 years ago. So it's like, that is forever.
We were all locked out in our houses 5 years ago.
right. It is forever. But I think maybe that's my biggest issue with this statement, is that right now, I mean, I'm operating on 18 months, and 18 months out, I have trouble. It is incredibly fuzzy 18 months out right now, right? When we're looking at our kind of, we don't talk really about strategic planning at this point. It's just, we are moving at breakneck pace. We're trying to create adaptability. We're trying to create elasticity in everything we do, because it is changing so fast. And so
yeah,
I think that's the other
like
big
your 1 month
sign.
plan, your 3 month plan, and you have your optimistic 6 month plan. But honestly, you know that 6 month plan is going to change a lot.
Yeah, it's changing so fast. So making a statement that 5 years from now, this is what it's going to be, to me, it's like, this is an effort to just try to be relevant or to get in the news or whatever. And I get all that, I guess, but it just, I take it with a huge grain of salt.